Okay, so
Good evening, Tuan Chandra. So, thank you for making your time. So then you can, after this, you can cut it and all that. Okay. Firstly, with regards to vicarious liability, yes, I have handled various cases involving vicarious liability. Okay, and everything. And the instances in which I've handled these cases mostly is related to the police force, whereby I've handled cases involving death in custody, whereby you have got detainees who have died in prison, died in lockup, and subsequently action is taken against the police force, against Kerajaan Malaysia. So I have represented the families of the deceased. Okay, that's cool. Okay. Now, more often than not, in most cases, I think everybody is interested to know in what circumstances people are vicarious liability. But yes, as what you have rightly asked me, there have been various instances in which the courts have held that the employers are not vicariously liable. The courts have certainly held so. And in what circumstances this has happened? Okay, firstly, as you know, for vicarious liability to exist, the employers, or rather the bosses, like you see in the police force, you're talking about, let's just give an example, an investigating officer, and he makes a mistake, he takes an action, or his actions cause the death of a detainee. Action is taken not only against him, but against Ketua Police of that state, and subsequently against the Inspector General of Malaysia, and subsequently against Kerajaan Malaysia. So this is the principle of vicarious liability. But there are, in exceptional circumstances, where the courts have held, no, the employers are not vicariously liable. And if you ask me any such example, it would be in a circumstance where the employee commits illegal act, and these acts which he had taken part in are not within the scope of their employment. As an example, a police officer who commits any act in the course of his official duty, assuming in the course of his investigation he performs an interrogation and the detainee dies, that is an action which he has performed in the course of his job. So the employer will be vicariously liable. Well, what happens if a police officer armed with a gun outside his office hours, outside the scope of his official duties, goes to a particular premises and probably extorts money, or even robs, commits any act which is not within his scope of job? Under such circumstances, certainly his employers are not vicariously liable. And apart from that, if you commit any illegal act, you are also your employers will not be vicariously liable. What do you mean by an illegal act? Assuming during a particular action, you're not supposed to arrest someone, but yet you arrest this person, and instead of bringing him to the Balai Police, you did not take him to the Balai Police, you took him elsewhere. And this is all not within your job scope, not committed within your official scope of duties. Under such circumstances, they will not be held to be vicariously liable. And if you ask me next, has there been any such cases, any such instances? Well, yes. From what I remember and from the research that we have done, in a particular case, the name of the case is Chuan Sing Pineapple Factory versus Idris and another. This was reported in 1962, MLJ page 239. So in this case, what happened? This defendant, he was a lorry driver. So he gave in his journey, he stopped and he gave a lift to two people. So these people got onto his lorry, and subsequently, when he gave lift to these two people, this lorry crashed and these two people died. So naturally, the family of the deceased took action against the company, against, of course, the lorry driver and his employer, saying, look here, you are to be vicariously liable for the actions committed by the lorry driver, resulting in the death of these two people. But the courts in that case said that they were not vicariously liable. The employees were not vicariously liable, simply because his act of giving a lift was outside his scope of employment. That's not his job. That's not his job scope, firstly. And secondly, in that case, there was already a prohibition, which means drivers was not supposed to give lift to anyone. So in such circumstances, when you're not supposed to do something, yet you do it, then your employers are not vicariously liable. Okay, so that is an example which I've quoted. That is a local case. There are other cases as well. And also another situation is a case in a foreign case. This is the case of Tualo versus Minister of Safety and Security. In this case, actually, two police officers, they were talking. There was a banter between both of them, and one of the police officers was taunting him about an extramarital affair. He was having an affair and everything. So he couldn't take the taunting. He took a gun and he shot his colleague. And the court in that case held that his employee did not act within the scope of his employment, despite the fact he was on duty. He was on duty, at that point of time. But his actions, the court held, did not act within the scope of his employment. And the courts held that the employees were not vicariously liable. And don't forget, this case, you must know this case simply because it was performed during the course of his duty. It is very seldom that a person is in the course of his duty saying, yet the court say, no, they are not vicariously liable. Okay? So, Chandra, these are the instances that I can tell you briefly, whereby the courts have held the employees to be not vicariously liable. I hope this answer has been helpful. Okay. Stop lah, then maybe we have another video.